So we'll know more about the state's strategy toward climate change at the end of the month when they release it for public comment. And staying now with climate change, President Biden's Build Back Better bill is being negotiated right now in the U.S. Senate. It's already passed the House and will probably have to go back there after the Senate makes some amendments. That's if it passes at all. It's a huge bill with a price tag of $1.7 trillion. And right now, it doesn't have the votes. But Democrats are hoping to work out a deal before the end of the month. So what does that mean for climate change? Well, the bill right now would put more than $500 billion into programs to address and respond to climate change. And some of that money could filter down to New York, which has its own ambitious climate goals, as you just heard. For more on that, I turn this week to Julie Tai from the New York League of Conservation Voters. She says the bill would be a huge boost to New York, but that there's more to be done at the state level as well. Julie, thanks so much for being here as always.
Dan, thank you for having me on.
Of course. So there's a lot going on in terms of the environment and climate change, in terms of legislation, both here at the state level, but also the federal level. We saw the infrastructure bill pass, and it was signed into law by President Biden. And now Congress is considering something called the Build Back Better plan, which does have some climate promises in it in terms of funding and strategy. Can you talk about that? What would we get in New York here under this bill? How would it benefit us in terms of climate?
Sure. So the bipartisan infrastructure deal was really sort of the down payment that we need to really get our pipes going. But really, the much bigger climate plan is in the Build Back Better Act. And we're very excited that the House of Representatives passed that. So this will really help to accelerate the pace of work that happens from the private sector as we move forward on the clean energy front. But it also contains billions of dollars for us to build out an EV network. There's also tax credits for families to buy electric vehicles themselves. That would be up to $12,500 for electric vehicles that are made in America with union labor. So really trying to incentivize how Americans transition away from fossil fuel powered vehicles to clean powered vehicles, as well as billions of dollars for making sure that our communities are resilient from flooding and heat and other types of impacts from climate change. And one thing that we're super excited about that's probably not getting talked about as much is funding to establish a civilian climate corps, which is very similar to AmeriCorps, but will be focused on making sure that we have climate resilient projects that are being built out across this country, something that we hope will also be used to invest in making sure that our building stock, our housing is being made more energy efficient. So there's $550 billion of projects in there. So there's a lot of funding going on, and we're very excited to see this move forward.
So remind me when, because we are banning new gas-powered vehicles in New York, they have to go all electric by sometime. Remind me when that is?
The New York adopted a law that says by 2035 you will not be able to buy a fossil fuel powered vehicle for personal use. For medium and heavy duty, so think buses and trucks, that's for 2045. So this will help to accelerate that transition, and we need two things for that. First, we need the infrastructure to make sure people have the opportunity to do this, and we need the incentives and the sort of the regulatory permanence that this will envision to make sure that the private sector has what they need to move forward. One of the bills that we think would be helpful to accelerate and combine with this proposal from the federal government is a clean fuel standard here in New York. It's something that actually is also being talked about at the national level as a potential replacement for the renewable fuel standard. So it's something that we know would help to provide incentives for the private sector and for local governments and other fleets to move off of fossil fuel powered vehicles and onto clean fuels, including, what we do in the interim time, right? Because we're going to still be selling these other vehicles and for the next 10, 20, 25 years, we want to make sure that we're reducing fossil fuel uses and pollution associated with them by moving on to clean fuels and accelerating that transition to electric vehicles.
Now, we didn't see the clean fuel standard passed last year. I remember last time you were on the show, I believe that we talked about that a little bit. So teeing it up for next legislative session, how do you convince lawmakers that this is something that you want to do, a path to true renewable energy, getting off these fossil fuels here in New York?
Sure. Well, we've been working very hard with the sponsors and educating members of the legislature because we know we need to accelerate, and we're not going to be able to, even with all these billions of dollars coming from the federal government, we're not going to be able to get there entirely on funding from the government. We're going to need to help to make this change by having the private sector make these investments as well, and this provides market mechanisms that encourage them to do that. We, however, do want billions of dollars from the state also for addressing climate change and the environment. And so we're really excited that Governor Hochul has proposed to increase the Bond Act from $3 billion, which the legislature passed earlier this year and is supposed to be on the ballot in 2022. Governor Hochul has proposed to raise that to $4 billion, call it the Clean Water, Clean Air, and Green Jobs Environmental Bond Act, which will make sure that we're getting investments for making our communities protected from flooding, for helping to reduce urban heat island effect, for helping to protect our parks and open spaces. And we hope that some of those funds can be used to help with the transition on clean transportation and making our schools more resilient, energy efficient, and on clean energy.
So we have these billions of dollars maybe coming from the federal government and these billions of dollars coming from the Bond Act if voters approve it. And then we have those private incentives. All this together, is that enough for us to reach our climate goals, or do we need other investments from other areas besides these public-private partnerships? I guess what I'm asking is, all of these resources that we're getting, do we need anything else on top of it to meet our goals?
I'm thinking we probably will. What that looks like yet remains to be determined, but there's a lot we need to do to transition to a green economy. And we'll see much more specifically, I think, some of the items that we need as the state moves forward with their scoping plan for the Climate Action Council, which will lay out in more detail what we need to do to transition the transportation sector, how we need to make our buildings more energy efficient and reduce our fossil fuel usage, how we're going to transition to clean manufacturing, and how we're going to make sure that we still have good jobs in New York for all those union workers who are currently working at fossil fuel powered plants, for example, to make sure that we are doing so justly.
Yeah, what an exciting climate-friendly future that I think we are all looking forward to. It's very exciting to think about, but we will leave it there. Julie Tai from the New York League of Conservation Voters, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on.